Hello, podcast friends, and welcome back to another episode of Simple Healthy Choices for Weight Loss. And in today's episode, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to do a simple assessment of their health. And this is so important because you've got to realize um, how healthy or unhealthy you are if you need to make changes in your life. And the easiest way to do this, and I've talked about this in some of my podcasts, because what I've talked about is how all this ultra processed man-made food that comes in box, bottles, bags, and cans that we buy, these are all loaded with horrible things for our body. It's loaded with horrible processed carbohydrates, which get turned immediately into glucose and put into our body, which causes us to stimulate our insulin release. And then high glucose and high insulin levels together is what's causing almost every horrible condition that we have right now. It's our obesity, it's our type 2 diabetes, it's Alzheimer's disease, it's cancer, really bad. It's skin conditions, POS, the polycystic ovarian syndrome. Pretty much any condition that you think of now, we never really saw this back before our new dietary guidelines came out that said that fat was bad and they eat low fat, no fat foods. And now we've realized, since those dietary guidelines came out in 77, that was the absolute worst thing that we could have ever put in our dietary guidelines, because now we know for a fact it is not dietary fat that makes you fat. It is the sugar and the high fructose corn syrup and the vegetable and seed oils and all these ultra processed carbohydrates that they put in all this food. And I've talked through my other podcasts about exactly how the fructose that's in all the sugar and all the high fructose corn syrup and all these vegetable and seed oils, how those two things mixed together are causing inflammation all over our body. And it's causing us to have all of our inflammatory diseases that we have now that we hardly ever had back before 1977. And then also, when we continuously bombard our body with just sugar after sugar, carbohydrates after carbohydrates, they all get broken down to glucose. They all stimulate our blood glucose, which stimulates our insulin release. And the key to good health is, because right now they tell you that type 2 diabetes is a blood glucose problem, and we need to do anything we can to get your blood glucose down. And with that thought in mind, we have made type 2 diabetes way worse than it ever was, because it is not a blood glucose problem. It is a blood insulin problem. And so what the goal is, keep both your glucose levels low and your insulin levels low. And the only way to do that is to quit eating carbohydrates. Because if you don't eat carbohydrates, they don't get turned into glucose. They don't raise your blood glucose levels. And so your body doesn't have to secrete insulin. But the problem with the type 2 diabetes medications is almost every single one of them actually works by stimulating your pancreas to produce more insulin. And that makes type 2 diabetes worse. And that's what makes it carry on and go into metabolic syndrome. So that's just a quick, brief explanation of the past podcast. So today, I kind of wanted to talk about how you assess your current health assessment, and we'll do this by using the metabolic syndrome. So, what is metabolic syndrome? And again, I've talked about this in some other podcasts. So if you've been listening to these, you're going to hear kind of the same thing. But metabolic syndrome is something that, again, this is new since our dietary guidelines 77 too. This was not an issue before that. Most of the conditions we have were not issues before our new dietary guidelines came out. But what these are there's 5 different things. And if you have any 3 of these 5, you're considered to have metabolic syndrome. Okay. And the reason why this is important is because if you have metabolic syndrome, that means that you are starting to damage almost every single organ in your body. Every organ is affected by this. Every organ is damaged, but different people have different damage in different organs. Some have multi-organ dysfunction or multi-organ failure. Some just have it affect 1 or 2 organs. But the liver is always affected. That's why we never used to see fatty liver disease outside of alcoholism. It used to be called alcoholic fatty liver disease, and now it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. This used to be a huge thing among alcoholics, and now type 2 diabetes has way surpassed the reason for fatty livers, and the most common reason for fatty liver or for liver transplants, and the most common reason for dialysis because of the kidney failure, because of all this high insulin and high sugar that's killing all of our organs. So how can you assess whether you are getting ready to kill all your organs and have a low quality life, or whether you're not? And again, it's going to go through these 5 things. These 5 things are high blood pressure, high fasting glucose, high triglyceride level, low HDL level, which is your good cholesterol, and an increased abdominal obesity. Okay. If you have any 3 of those 5 things, and I'm going to go through this individually, and so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you have any 3 of these 5 things, you are considered to have metabolic syndrome, which means if you don't change the type of food that you eat and go from man-made ultra processed food and switch over to God-made real animal meat with real animal fat, a little bit of vegetables, and even less fruits, you've got to make that change if you want to become healthy. So let's take the first one, high blood pressure. High blood pressure. This means that if you have a blood pressure that's greater than 130 over 85, or if you're taking medication for high blood pressure, either one of those, that's considered a high blood pressure mark that you can check towards your metabolic syndrome. The second one is your fasting blood glucose. If you have a fasting blood glucose that you get from your doctor when you do your annual checkups, or however often you do it, if your fasting blood glucose is higher than 100 milligrams per deciliter, or if you're taking medication for high glucose, if either one of those happen, you can make that as a check also that you are going towards metabolic syndrome. The third one is a high triglyceride level. Okay. So if you have a high triglyceride level, when you get your cholesterol levels checked to the doctor, if your triglyceride level is higher than 150 milligrams per deciliter, or you're taking medication to lower triglycerides, if either one of those, either taking medication or it's greater than 150, make that a check also that now you are also heading towards metabolic syndrome. And then the fourth one is a low HDL. And HDL is what's called your good cholesterol. And this is huge. What you want with your HDL is, for men, you want your HDL. This one's different. You want your HDLs to be high. So a low HDL level is bad. So with men, you want your HDL level to be higher than 40 milligrams per deciliter. And for women, you want your HDL to be higher than 50 milligrams per deciliter. If you are a male and it's less than 40, or if you're a female and it's less than 50, this also could be checked off towards having metabolic syndrome, which means you're getting ready to have multi-organ failure. And the fifth one is increased abdominal obesity. And this one is very important. What you need to do for increased abdominal obesity is you need to measure your waist around the belly button, the biggest part of your weight, not your pant size, not your waist pant size, way down where people wear their pants below their belly, but up at the biggest part of the belly. When you measure that circumference around your belly, that should be less than half of your height. So let's say that you are 5'8". So that means that you are 68 inches tall. So half of 68 inches is 34 inches. So if you're a 5'8" and your waist is greater than 34 inches, and again, this is not your pant size waist. This is taking a measuring tape around where your belly button is. If that is higher than 34 inches, then that means that you have abdominal obesity, and there's very indicative that you are starting to store fat all around your internal organs. And we were never, ever supposed to store fat around our internal organs. And this is another thing that was just not seen before 1977, back when our dietary guidelines came out. All these are new. So if you have the high blood pressure, greater than 130/85, a high fasting blood glucose, higher than 100, or high triglyceride level higher than 150, or taking medication for any of those, or you have a low HDL level or an increased abdominal obesity. If you have any of three of those, you are said to have metabolic syndrome, and you are spiraling down to an extremely unhealthy and extremely poor quality of life in your future. And you've got to make some major changes. Now, the thing with this is it's not all about just these things. Notice on here, having a high LDL level, that's not even a thing. That's not one of the things on the under metabolic syndrome, because they tell you that LDLs are bad, that's bad cholesterol. And this is not true. This is basically, it's a lie, because they know that it's not true. But there's good LDLs and there's bad LDLs. And I've talked about this in past podcasts, talking about the different types of fat, the different types of sugar that we eat and everything, and that there are large buoyant LDLs that are actually good LDLs. That's how our body gets the fat out of the liver and distributes around to the body for all the places in our body where fat needs to be. So we use fat in the cell membranes of every single one of our cells. We use fat for a lot of our hormones like testosterone, estrogen, vitamin D, cortisol. These are all made out of cholesterol and fat. Okay, so fat is actually very good for us, even if the dietary guidelines said it wasn't. Those were lied. Those have been killing us, and we are trying to fight that information now. But the only reason they tell you that LDLs are bad is because they have drugs that will decrease your LDL levels. But these drugs have never shown in any study where this helps with cardiovascular events at all. Okay, so it depends on whether you have the good LDLs or the bad LDLs. And the bad LDLs, these are what's formed because of continuously eating all this ultra processed carbohydrates every 2-3 hours, every single day, day in and day out. And you force your body to do nothing but store fat. You can never burn your own fat. And so this is where it depends on whether you have the good LDLs or the bad LDLs. And the bad LDLs come from this ultra processed food. So that's important to realize. So again, 5 things: high blood pressure, high fasting glucose, high triglyceride level, low HDL, and increased abdominal obesity. What you'll find, total cholesterol is nowhere on here, and neither is the LDL levels, because they found that is not what causes problems. Fat and cholesterol in your diet is not a problem. That does not cause you to be obese. It's the vegetable and seed oils. It's that horrible fat. That's what causes all the problems, which puts inflammation in our body. So when you're assessing this, what you really want to do, it's not just these numbers, but what you look at with your cholesterol is a ratio. So basically what you're going to be testing is you're going to look at your triglycerides divided by your HDL, your good cholesterol. Or you want to look at your total cholesterol divided by your HDLs. And the higher your HDLs are, the better your levels are going to look. So if you take your triglyceride level and divide that by your HDL level, your triglycerides should not be any more than twice your HDLs. So let's just say you have an HDL of 60, then you want your triglyceride level to be less than 120. Okay. So you want that to be less than 2. And really what you'd like to have is a 1-to-1. That's a better ratio where you have your HDL level and your triglyceride level are equal. Or like, and a lot of us who have actually switched our diet, our HDL levels are actually higher than our triglyceride levels. So that's what you want. Your triglycerides divided by your HDLs, you want that 2 or less. The other thing you're going to look at is your total cholesterol. But again, it's not the number of total cholesterol. It's your total cholesterol divided by your HDL. That's important. So when you take your total cholesterol and divide that by your HDL, that should be 5 or less. And really, you'd like to have that more around 3.5 to 3. So as you can see, the higher your HDLs, the better it's going to be for these ratios of triglyceride to HDLs and cholesterol to HDLs. So that can bring this back, and that can be protective in this. And when you change your food, when you quit eating all this man-made, ultra-processed food in the box, bottles, bags, and cans down the inner aisles of the grocery stores, when you stop eating that, your triglyceride level will go down. I really, really hope that people understand that every single medication out there has multiple adverse effects. You can find this out by every time a drug company comes on a commercial on the television. Please, please shut your eyes and just listen to all the adverse effects. So you may be taking a medication that may be taking care of a little skin rash like eczema, but the adverse effects is you could ultimately die or have liver failure or kidney failure or any of the number of other things that happen. And they try to put this pretty video behind it so it distracts you and you don't listen to all the adverse effects. But you need to listen to them because every single medication has multiple adverse effects. If you can take care of this with nutrition, there are no adverse effects. You're giving the body the nutrients that it needs to grow, heal, thrive, and survive, and you will feel wonderful for it. So please, if you have the mindset of, hey, there's nothing a pill can't cure, you have got to change that thought because that is incorrect. No pills, no medication is curing any of this. If you're on medication for high blood pressure, the pill does not make high blood pressure go away. All it does is it just kind of keeps it in check. Same thing. If you're taking medication for high blood glucose, chances are you're making diabetes worse because it's focusing on the glucose and not the insulin. And these diabetic medications actually work by making your insulin levels higher. And that's what's causing all the problems. So you have to be careful. If you're taking medication for triglycerides, high triglycerides or high cholesterol, that can be totally taken care of by not eating ultra processed food. If you stick to just eating real animal meat with real animal fat, I guarantee you your triglycerides will go down unless there's some other odd thing. But the majority of everybody, it's all because of the massive amounts of these ultra processed carbs that we eat. And again, this all came back in 1977 with our dietary guidelines when they first came out and said that fat makes you fat. We need everything to go to non-fat, low fat, and put all the carbs instead. And that's when all of our health has just plummeted. It's been a horrible, horrible ride. And basically ever since 1980. And I mean, this goes with everything. Like I said, heart disease, blood vessel disease, liver disease, kidney disease, polycystic ovarian syndrome, Alzheimer's. I mean, the list goes on and on of these conditions that just came about and just got horribly worse and are getting worse every single year since our dietary guidelines came out. So that's what you want to do. What you want to look at your blood pressure, your fasting glucose, your triglyceride, your HDL levels, and measure your obesity around your abdomen. Look at those 5 things. If these are high, you have got to make a change, and that change is not getting medications. And remember, I've been a clinical pharmacist. I've been a doctor of pharmacy for over 30 years now, and I am telling you, you've got to get off this medication, and you can. And the only way is by eating the true, healthy, God-made food that we've been eating ever since the beginning of time. So that's the main thing with metabolic syndrome. You can also obviously do the way that a lot of people do is scale weight. And be careful about a scale weight because this can fluctuate so much. That's why at first, when people are going through our program, the first thing we want them to do is the very first day, we want them to measure 3 times throughout the day. Step on the scale 3 times throughout the day. And the only reason we do that, and that's just for day one, is so they can see that your scale weight is going to change quite a bit just through the day. And then we're going to have them do their scale weight every day, once a day, because we want them to not get into the psychology of a scale weight going up or down, because this can vary from if you eat a really salty meal that's making you keep your water in, or if you're drinking a lot of water, that's going to make your weight go way up. If you haven't eaten and you haven't drinking water in a while, or you had a lot of diuretics, like you're drinking a lot of, soda pop or coffee or tea or any of these fluids that make you lose your water, if you're having any of those, your scale weight's going to go down. but that doesn't have anything to do with your health and what your natural body is. So weigh yourself, but don't let that get into your psyche about what you're doing, because your weight will fluctuate. And that's why we don't put a lot of pun intended, we don't put a lot of weight into testing your scale weight. But there are other things you can do. Look in your pant size. That's how a lot of people do it. Look at what pant size you were. What pant size did you wear last year? What pant size did you wear 5 years ago? What belt notch were you on last year versus 5 years ago? If you are getting bigger and your belt notches, you're going out on the belt notches, you're going in a wrong direction. And then when you add this all to the blood pressure and the abdominal girth and the fasting glucose and triglycerides and HDLs, when you add that all together, this is leading to something very, very bad that a lot of people don't really focus on until it's too late. They don't think about it until they end up on multiple medications, multiple hospitalizations. Now they're going to have their toes amputated, their feet amputated, their legs amputated. They're going to have to go on dialysis. And this is the people are like, why didn't I pay attention to my health earlier? And this is not rare. This is so rare. Our dialysis patients are increasing every single year. Our type 2 diabetics are increasing every single year. This is not going to cure itself. And the government and the food companies and the drug companies and the sugar industry, they are not going to help you, because they are making billions of dollars off of the types of food that they are selling to you and the types of drugs they're selling to you that are making you more and more sick. And so you've got to take your health into your own hands. What you really need to do, and what we've done, is we quit buying all food from grocery stores. We don't buy it. We get our meat from local farmers. We'll go in with a bunch of friends and buy a cow or a side of beef, and they'll process it for us. And that's where we get our meat. We'll go to local farmers from the farmers markets and get our real fruits and our real vegetables that don't have all the glyphosate and all the pesticides and everything else that's in it. We shop local for our food, and that's what we eat. And that's what I'd really love for everybody here to do, the exact same thing. Please, your money talks. So if you keep giving your money to these ultra processed food companies, they're going to continue to grow, and they're going to be continuously putting out the same food-like substance that is killing us. If you put all your money into the local farmers, that's where they're going to be able to make their farms better, bigger, and give you more healthy fruits, vegetables, and meat and eggs. We get all of our eggs also. We get those from the local farmers also. We don't mess with all the eggs you get from the grocery store. I guarantee if you do this, you're going to feel so good about yourself, and you're going to feel so good. You're going to find that you have more energy. You're not going to be clear-headed, or not going to be foggy-headed in the middle of the afternoon. You're not going to be tired. You're not going to be on any medication. You're not going to be going to the doctors. You're not going to be going to the hospitals. There are two huge groups. There is one group of people that they are on multiple medications. They're going to see their doctor all the time, and they're getting them into the hospital all the time. And they don't realize that there's another entire huge group of people that are on zero medications. They never go to the doctor unless it's trauma, and they never go to the hospital unless it's trauma. That's where you want to be. And those are the people that are out living high quality lives. They're doing all the activities they want to do. They don't let their weight, they don't let their health keep them from doing something they want to do. And that's what we want you to be by listening to these podcasts, reading my book. Your Plate is Your Fate is the name of my book, if you didn't know. But if you listen to my podcast and you read this book and you follow everybody else that we've been following, getting all of our information from, I guarantee you're going to have a much, much better quality of life. So once again, if you can buy all your food local or from farmers markets and stay away from the ultra processed food, you're going to do yourself so much good as far as your quality health in the future. So anyway, so that's how you can assess your weight. You can step on the scale, monitor your blood pressure, your fasting glucose, your triglyceride level, your HDL levels, and your abdominal obesity. And please do yourself a favor and please make these changes. Don't think you're going to do it someday, because the bigger and bigger you get, the harder it's going to be for you to reverse these changes. And so that's all I have for right now. And we will continue to do more podcasts where we can help people actually try to figure out their own way, how they can actually start losing this fat, losing this weight. And remember, when you are fat, they're trying to tell you that fat is beautiful. You shouldn't have to worry about your fat. Love yourself the way that you are. But you cannot look at fat as a way that you look. You have to look at fat as this means that your internal organs are starting to wear out on you, and they're going to be giving out. So if you truly love yourself, you're not looking at fat as your looks. You're looking at fat as your health, and you will try to get that fat off. So if you truly love yourself, you're going to give your body the nutrients it needs to grow, heal, thrive, and survive. Stay away from medications, stay away from man-made food, and your body will do so much better. That's how you're going to show that you love your body, not because you're wearing pretty clothes that cover up all the fat that is making your organs die inside. And I don't mean to just be in your face with it, but that is exactly how I feel, and that's exactly what's going on. So I know this was kind of a downer podcast. I didn't mean for it to be that way, but I do want everybody to understand that this is a very, very serious thing. And please try to eat healthy, drink plenty of water, get plenty of sleep, try to have good stress coping mechanism to handle stress, and eat healthy food. And your body will love you, and you will love your body. So that's all I have for now. Thank you again so much for listening, and have a great week. And remember, make simple, healthy choices to live a quality life.